Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Hugh, over to you.
Thanks, Alyssa, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Securing the Future, Leveraging AI Against Supply Chain Threats. This is a collaborative webinar presented by Leadership Connect in partnership with Sayari. My name is Hugh Murphy, and I serve as Senior Vice President here at Leadership Connect. As 2025 winds down, global supply chains are increasingly in the crosshairs, not only for logistics and compliance, but for national security and criminal enforcement. From trafficking to financial fraud to cyber enablement disruptions, the threat landscape is evolving very quickly, as we know. At the same time, artificial intelligence is transforming both the threat surface and the defensive response as hostile actors use AI to obscure their movements and manipulate markets or exploit global networks. Agencies are looking at AI tools themselves for their own purposes to expose patterns, trace networks, and build smarter resilience. So today's conversation, we're going to explore this dual challenge, how AI is used by adversaries and how it can be deployed as a strategic asset by leaders across um, government for enforcement, cybersecurity, intelligence, technology, and compliance. So over the next hour, we'll cover four main themes, looking at the emerging threat, how our supply chains are being targeted and exploited. What are some of those key examples right now? Looking at AI in action and strengthening detection and response. What practical use cases for detection, mapping, and responses are being deployed? And then we'll also look at collaboration across these domains and how we can connect the technical policy and enforcement strategies together. And then we'll kind of wrap up with just, what the future looks like. What are some takeaways as we head into 2026? Before we jump into the session today, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping notes. As a reminder, Leadership Connect is registered with the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy and as a sponsor of continuing professional education on the National Registry of CPE sponsors. Specifically, this webinar is up for one CPE credit in the information and technology field of study. And in order to receive credit, please answer our three polling questions, which will be presented throughout today's discussion. We definitely encourage you to ask questions. There's a Q&A button on the bottom of the Zoom session. And with that, I'd love to introduce today's speakers. We have a great panel for everyone today. First, we have Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Love, who's joining us all the way from Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii. Josh is Cyber Mission Assurance Branch Chief, as I said, at the Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii. We also have Dr. Jenny Kuhn, CIO and OIT Director in the Office of the Director, Executive Office at NIH. We have Cameron Burden, the Cybersecurity Specialist with the Office of Water Emergency Response and Cybersecurity at the EPA. And also joining us is Nellie Beechwood, Senior AI Technical Lead with Sayari. So welcome, everyone. Really excited to dive into this. I think it would be great just to give you all a chance to do a more proper introduction, and we'll go from there. Maybe, Josh, we could start with you.
Hey, this is Lieutenant Colonel Josh Love calling from sunny Hawaii. So my condolences for those who are in DC and I guess the 10-degree weather. It's 80 degrees outside, so I may be going to scuba diving or snorkeling this weekend to commiserate the snow. But at work, my job is cyber mission assurance. So it's a pretty cool job because is this field or this effort is really never done or has not been done well. And so we're paving a lot of new ground. And so it's a lot of exploratory learning here at PACAF that we get to do. So it's, like I said, it's a lot of fun and we're proving some really awesome concepts.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you again for rubbing in the weather that you're having out in beautiful Hawaii. Jenny, do you want to go next?
Sure. Nice to see everyone. So I'm Dr. Jenny Kuhn. As you mentioned, I work for the NIH as a CIO in the Office of the Director. I've been with the federal government for a few years. I was in higher ed previously. I also adjunct teach and teach master's level cybersecurity courses for Purdue University. So get to do a little bit of the adjunct side along with the implementation in real life. My office in particular focuses on policy and AI guidance. We do a lot of tool implementations for the rest of the NIH, which is a little bit different than maybe some of the other federal agencies, definitely more research focused and maybe more aligned to higher ed. So happy to be here.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Welcome again. Cameron, do you want to go next?
How you doing, everybody? Cameron Burton here from EPA. Cybersecurity analyst with EPA. And I've just reached my fourth year for this role here with EPA. We do, I would say, essentially all things cybersecurity for the water sector, for everything that helps utilities prepare for, respond to, and recover from cybersecurity incidents. On my team, I am the lead for developing and conducting the cybersecurity trainings. But we do wear, a lot of hats on our team here. So it's nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. And certainly, last but certainly not least, Melly.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I am Melly Beachwood, the team lead for our AI Innovation Lab here at Sayari. We work across all of our products, but primarily our graph investigation tool and map our supply chain. So really excited to be here. I'm one of the more recent joins of Sayari, coming in from places like Tableau and Axon, and my background specializing in artificial intelligence, both computer vision, NLP, and now agentic AI.
Great. Thanks, Melly, and thanks again for partnering with us on this great session today. I wanted to maybe we can jump into it now, starting. I'll just want to hear from all of you, sort of from your perspectives. What are some of the the key areas that when you think about supply chain risks, what are top of mind? What are kind of more urgent or prevalent in this past year that you'd like to highlight for the audience? I guess, Melly, you still have the screen. Maybe we'll start with you this time.
Happy to. Well, right now, I think we're having a lot of emerging dynamic world in supply chain. We're getting an increased response in regulations, in changing dynamics all across the board. And AI has really changed that landscape, both for our threat analysis, but also for our ability to counteract it. We're able now to work at a scale never before seen, but we're also step in step with bad actors who also have availability to this technology and are using it also at never before seen scales. So it's a very interesting landscape at this time.
Thanks, Melly. Maybe Jenny, you want to go next? What are you seeing?
Sure. Yeah. So I think for us, that's maybe a little bit different than a traditional supply chain. I think for us, we're looking at how we're being impacted in terms of, the researchers. The NIH has an actual clinical center on site. So we are seeing a lot of maybe more realistic phishing campaigns, really targeting some of our higher profile folks, knowing that there's been such a disruption, right, given the administration changes that are happening. And there's this maybe sense of urgency that's encouraging folks to maybe overlook things that they would have in the past. We're seeing things like vendor impersonation, redirecting to, malicious websites. And I think for us, it's maybe going to be more difficult to identify those AI phishing attempts just because the tools are constantly learning, right? And trying to mimic those human behaviors where the things that we teach our users to look out for in the past, right, are becoming a thing of the past, right? So things like poor grammar, right? You can go out to ChatGPT and do a quick search and have it, correct everything for you, make it sound more authentic. And I think those are things we're definitely seeing an uptick in.
Cameron?
So we at EPA, for as far as like supply chain risk goes, we're working to kind of I wouldn't say raise the awareness, but raise the awareness in the sense that things can happen outside of their control for the water utilities. We've developed a tool recently called a procurement checklist that we have out there for water utilities, where we help them understand how to assess where they get their things from. So if they say, "Hey, we want a new SCADA system," they can use this checklist to go through and understand what vendor would be a better fit for their needs. So we're doing the best we can to provide any tool and resource out there for the water sector to kind of understand the risk with supply chain.
Thanks, Cameron. Josh?
So PACAP being in the middle of the ocean, pretty much that one of our key limitations is supply chain. So pretty much everything's coming from CONUS. So how do we leverage those disparate systems that are not usually talking to each other? How do we aggregate all those stovepipe systems into telling a comprehensive story? So we're really looking at using AI to help, I guess, coalesce that data. To help commanders make those risk-informed decisions in a whole plan environment. So, like multiple Excel spreadsheets combining in a time frame that you can make those decisions like a matter of seconds. That is not happening right now. And then from a DCO perspective, our defensive cyber, how do we ensure from a point A to the point, I guess, point N, that supply chain has that CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, availability. So the commander knows that that information he's looking at is CIA. So that is one of our big problem sets right now. And then obviously the adversaries are looking at AI to attack that, because what we're seeing it right now.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Talking about AI and these other, components, we're shaping the way risks are being exploited. Like you kind of all touched on a few. Any specific examples of like, where bad actors are using AI? Any other examples where you can share you've experienced? This could be anyone who has a quick thought.
So I'd
Yeah,
say from
Jenny?
the healthcare side of things, we look at protecting people maybe a little bit differently from protecting other assets. We're kind of trying to change the narrative on how we go about doing that, right? We're not necessarily following those traditional maybe security practices that we see for other industries. And so, we look at things where, falsifying logistical information, right? We're creating actual shortages, right? Or there's diversions, right? And we may not get the supplies that we need, and that creates, actual real safety risks that impact, patient care. It impacts the quality of the care, the timeliness, and at the end of the day, I mean, these are sometimes life and death situations, and so, being able to try to rapidly identify when those types of things are happening is something that we as people aren't very good at. And so, looking to some of the AI tools to help us identify maybe some of those anomalies or those trends and analysis over time, may have taken us as people much longer to identify, where now those tools that we have in place can help us spot those types of disruptions, hopefully earlier.
Absolutely. And Jenny, you mentioned earlier about some, certain things getting overlooked sometimes. There's certain types of threats or kind of signals that maybe do get overlooked, and it's a little too late by that point.
Yeah, so sometimes we'll see things, for example, in medical devices, right? A lot of the firmware that are in those devices will see some sort of kind of a normal software type drift over time from the application perspective. And that's something that may seem insignificant. If you look at something like a defibrillator, right? And knowing that that is going to be the stopgap between saving someone's life, that's something we need to be able to identify where those anomalies exist and to see those patterns happening, more real time. And so, we see things like that those micro changes that as people, right, we wouldn't necessarily recognize that to be an issue. We expect there to be a little bit of a drift over time. But that's something that from an AI perspective, we can use that, or we see the attackers using those types of techniques that weren't necessarily available to them in the past.
Cameron, are you kind of incorporating any of this into when you're thinking of like doing training in terms of being able to help people identify some of these gradual shifts maybe that get overlooked?
And you're asking in terms of AI?
Yeah, AI, and I mean if there's anything sort of adjacent to it as well.
So with AI, it's in its infancy stage when it pertains to the water sector. We do see that utilities may eventually use it for things such as to kind of like to kind of cut down on certain times for certain things in the sense of, hey, I want to check pump levels, or if they want to do some sort of planning to expand things at their utility, they can use AI for that. Again, it's in its infancy stage, but we do expect it to eventually become a popular thing within the water sector. And I definitely say that in the sense of just a few years ago, the concept of remoting into any of their operational technology pieces would have seemed like, we're never going to do that. I'm never going to be able to use my iPad to log in and check my SCADA system. But clearly today we've reached that goal. So even though it's in the infancy stages, we know it's coming at some point. So now it's just planning ahead of how can we start planning to let water utilities know what to look for and things, the type of trainings that we can develop. But we have to kind of understand at the moment, what do they plan to do with AI? How do they want to use it in their utilities? And so we're at the point now of just trying to figure out where can we fit in to kind of get ahead of the game and understanding what the utilities might want to do in the future.
I guess Melanie, anything yeah, from your perspective as CRE, like that you're helping clients and providing that?
We've had a lot of clients across a lot of sectors, both private and public, seeing a rapid change in how bad actors are kind of using their own things or at a higher scale. So whether that's the ability to create shell companies in a much faster space, whether that's having kind of the unknown of unknowns, if you can make some of the work we've done around the fentanyl crisis has been around finding some of the chemical traits and using AI blueprints to kind of spot uh, these networks and help assist in finding of these. What we're seeing is that the scale, like I said before, is just exploding. And we think it's going to continue to be a dynamic change where they're going to be adjusting and being able to do it at a faster scale. Our products are designed to help keep that up with that dynamic of seeing not just what's there today, but knowing the world model and the threat model and keeping it in a dynamic loop that enables us to be able to spot those as they're rising and before it's too late.
Yeah. And Josh, I know you'd mentioned, having to work with so many disparate systems. I imagine that can make it pretty easy for something to sort of maybe slip through the cracks, or, there's such a subtle change over time. Like, have you, what are some of the things you're seeing there?
Yeah, and I'll talk about one particular issue is everybody knows salt typhoon, volt typhoon, living off the land type of attacks. Those are not signature-based attacks. To my knowledge, I don't know if there's a signature really developed from an antivirus scanner to be able to detect those. So what you had to do is look at anomaly detection to be able to detect those living off the land techniques. So how do we pull the disparate systems of the Active Directories and the firewalls and all that to paint that picture that, hey, there's something anomalous or some bad actor or some weird behavior going on the network, and how do we alert the the local defenders to be able to triage that? And so that's one of the things that we're trying to get after, and we have a lot of collaboration with some various DoD or DOW organizations to figure out how do we how do we do anomaly detection. So that's our big push right now from a PACAF perspective, from a I guess algorithm kind of warfare perspective.
It's really interesting. I guess wanted to kind of get the audience to take, as I mentioned, we have some polling questions coming throughout the session today, and I'd like to share the first one with you all. Um, where does your organization currently feel most vulnerable regarding risk visibility? Is it from third party or vendor exposure, illicit financial flows, and shell entities? I know one of you mentioned, setting up shell companies, upstream supplier blind spots, logistics linked risks, or maybe something else, or not really specifically for your type of work. So I'd be really curious to see what the audience has to say. It'd be great to maybe just if any of you have any initial reactions once we see those results pop up, which I think we have here now. It looks looks like logistics linked to cyber risk is the top, followed by that third party vendor exposure. Um, Anyone have any thoughts there? I guess that the last one, the first one, the third party vendor exposure, I think is interesting, right? How do you sort of account for that, right? Like you can do all the right things in your organization, but are there steps you're all taking to when you're working with a third party to make sure that they're not going to become a risk for yourselves?
So I'll jump in here. I think for me, this is something that is like the heartburn that keeps me up at night, right? Because you hope that your team is doing all of the right things, right? And you're going through all of the process and you're doing your risk assessments, you're doing your vulnerability scans, you're doing the awareness training, right? You're doing all the things that you should be doing. But at the end of the day, right, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And we enter into a lot, and especially on the government side, for example, into these partnerships, and we rely on these vendors, to provide us services, but we don't always have the insight into their practices, right? And they can say that they're doing all of the right things, but it's very hard to be able to prove that, right? And it's really, I think for me, kind of comes down to the partnership, especially in new relationships. We spend a lot of time vetting the vendors that we're working with, just trying to understand, how do they go about identifying and classifying the types of information, right? How do they select their people? We want to know how they're doing their own, risk assessments and monitoring their own environments, and to see if that kind of matches up to with what we're expecting. And I think once we build that level of trust, right, and understanding that, their priorities align to ours, it makes it maybe a little less heartburn, but it's still, that weakness that you're dependent upon somebody else. And I think given the global nature of the way that supply chains and that, business works, it's just part of the business at this point, and we just have to try to counter as best as we can.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, Melly.
This is one that's definitely near and dear to our hearts. Part of the what our big mission here is to enable people to, instead of being having to go vendor up and try to source out, is this a trustworthy vendor? And you're then depending on what they say and then what they have been told from their vendors and all the way up the chain. One of the things that we're passionate about is helping use authoritative sources from across the entire globe to kind of invert that so you can see it from the other way down and you can see what they may not even be able to know, and those risks associated, allowing you to have a more confident view that your supply chain and these vendors are who they say they are, that they're ones that they're being told is what they think it is, and that you're not getting into a risky situation, whether that's forced labor, sanctions, or any of the intricacies of the day and age. So this is one that I think having more information, especially from authoritative sources and matching that, is just incredibly valuable.
Thanks, Melly. Yeah, Cameron.
To piggyback off of what Jenny said, how she stated that you're only as strong as your weakest link. That's why, like us at EPA, we developed the procurement checklist to allow the water utilities out there to assess those third-party vendors. So, for an example, like when we're doing our training, I give them an actual example to run through the actual checklist, and we say, you have 2 to 3 vendors, and you want to get a SCADA system from them. Who do you pick? To kind of ease that stress of, well, what if they put us at risk? There are questions in there that will ask something along the lines of like, does the vendor have multi-factor authentication? If there's ever a cybersecurity incident, is the vendor required to let you know? If so, what does the timeline look like? What information are they supposed to tell you? So we develop these tools and resources to kind of bring that easing feeling for the water utilities out there when they need to go out and work with third-party vendors and things like that. Because we do understand that it can be stressful when you need to make an improvement at your utility. You need to work with a vendor, and you don't know if their cybersecurity posture aligns with yours at the utility. As Jenny was stating, you can do all the trainings, you can have all the certifications that you need, you can have everything in place at your utility, but it could be that one factor of, hey, we got something from another vendor, their cybersecurity practices don't really match up to ours, and so now they're putting us at risk. But the way that the assessment works that we've developed, it kind of brings that ease of, okay, now we can check to see if they're up to speed with how we are, and we can feel comfortable with making a selection.
Absolutely. No, that's really interesting, Cameron. And Josh, I know when we were speaking during our prep call the other day, you'd mentioned like you're not necessarily purchasing different solutions, but you're involved in sort of the evaluation and testing these things. How does that process work on your end? And are you looking into these things as well?
Yep, yep. So in PACAF, I have zero credit card ability, but 16th Air Force and the C have those big credit cards. But what they rely on us is to derive those operational requirements. So there's a strong partnership between those three or two other organizations. One of the things I also want to highlight is typically what happens is a vendor will sell, say, a Ferrari or a Lamborghini to the government, and then the government will impose their restrictions and it'll turn to say a Pinto or something like that. And then the user that's supposed to be operating it is probably trained on a aircraft or some other terrain. So from a supply chain, we need to be able to uh, have a more of a robust end-to-end kind of the Lamborghini gets the local defender, and the local defender is trained to operate on the Lambo, because right now that is not happening. And then also in the acquisition cycle, DOW is known for its slow acquisition cycles, and I think they're measured in years, not in months or days. And so somehow we need to be able to get that faster. And then also one of the things we're doing here at least in the Pacific Theater is partnering with outside the wire. Sorry, when I say outside the wire, outside the base. So inside the wire is what we go on. Outside the wire, we have to partner with. So we're really partnering with like Hawaiian Electric and Hawaiian Telco, because at least on HICM, we rely on those services very much. And so how do we partner with them closer to be able to ingest, are they up or down, not so much their network data, but are they able to perform their job as, say, a Hawaiian Electric or a Hawaiian Telco? And if not, how can we get that notification faster? So we're working with Cybercom through legal agreements and to protect both the government and Hawaiian Electric and Telco. So more to follow on that one.
That's really interesting. Thanks, Josh. I guess, with AI in all aspects of our lives, we talk about like the speed of which it's developing, and you know how I'd love to like talk to all of you a little bit more about just like how you're really leveraging AI on your end in action. I know we've mentioned a couple of things, but from kind of that strategic vantage point of where is that AI being applied, maybe where it's being applied most effectively in certain situations, whether it's to, tracking, risky activity or, you know, providing better visibility, et cetera. But love to hear any examples you have, like where you have been successful in applying AI into your workflows. Anyone want to take that one first?
I'll take that one since I'm still immune. So we're at least in the DOW, we're still trying to figure out how AI is going to be utilized. So there's a lot of various efforts, some more developed than others. But yeah, we're definitely using AI, and it's becoming more and more part of the battle rhythm. Like our previous exercises, pretty much the PACAF commander is saying, how do we leverage AI to enable faster, say it staffing processes? Because staffing is not fast because you're building PowerPoints and culminating a lot of the data. So how do we leverage the AI tools to be able to make available those decisions to Compact App or Admiral Paro as in the Baycom Commander faster? So they're definitely looking at AI for that.
Thanks, Josh. Anyone else have an example or
Yeah, so
What's been working? Yeah, go ahead.
we've started implementing some AI tools, right? Without giving that away for vulnerabilities, more specifically looking at the, anomaly detection, right? That's the part that I think for us, we're really trying to figure out how we can use our resources the most efficient way, and knowing that AI is able to kind of have maybe more insights, right, than a person or the traditional alerting methods. Trying to get over things like the alerting fatigue, and to be able to make sure that we're connecting as many systems as we can into the tool that we're using. And so I think for us, it's really just looking at the ways that we can, leverage the playbooks that we have. We're transitioning those as more of those AI tools are getting brought into the environment, because obviously, like everyone, the AI onslaught is here, right? Everyone wants to have some sort of tools. They want all the connectivity. They want to be able to use everything. And I think right now it's creating a lot of technical debt. And so we're trying to look at it from the proactive approach of, how can we best use our time, right? We have infinite security resources. And so there's only so many things that we can do, and to keep our eyes on. And so, being able to leverage tools that are using that automation in itself, I think for us is really just being good stewards of the dollar, and being able to, try to be a little bit more proactive.
Absolutely. Um, Cameron, I know you had mentioned earlier that, AI hasn't really taken hold in the water sphere, but from your role, like from a training perspective, are you all thinking about, like, because sort of what we've mentioned a little bit, the tool and different AI tools are great, but you still need the people to implement them and make them work for you. Like, are you starting to think about how to kind of train the workforce in your world to, or how that may shift the workforce and the use cases?
So I can say that at the moment on our side, there is, I don't want to say minimal. There are some efforts, but I mean, they're not in my silo. They're in someone else's silo. And so it's not something that I could fully speak to at the moment. But as far as EP as a whole for our team, there isn't a lot relating to AI on our side yet. We do plan to do like some more courses for this upcoming year, and we want to figure out, how can we push past what we've already done as far as like some of the cybersecurity basics, some of the operational technology basics for the water sector. And I think that would be a perfect opportunity to include things on AI, maybe giving like, basic courses so the water sector understands, what AI is, ways that it's been used in everyday life, identifying like common items that they might come across that function off of AI that they're not aware of. But that's about as far as it goes on the EPA side. We do know that CISA has released a document just recently where they talk about AI for the water sector, and I think it's NIST that they link to. I apologize for not knowing who it is off the top of my head, but I think they link two links back to NIST. The first one is a document that provides guidance on how how to support the development and deployment of AI at a water utility if it were to be something that they want to do. And the other one is a document to kind of help improve the trustworthiness of AI in the water sector. But again, with it being such in its infancy stages, that's all that really I wouldn't say that's all, but it's not much at the moment as far as AI and the water sector. It's mostly just ideas floating around, and where there's some efforts here, efforts there, but it's not like a full blown plan that everyone's following to try to meet for the water sector.
Thanks, Cameron. Yeah, Melly, I wanted to ask you, because I know you have the perspective of seeing, kind of working across the board with lots of different clients. I'd love to hear your thoughts on AI.
Absolutely. So I'll kind of keep this high level as an AI engineer. If you guys are wanting to ask further questions, feel free. But at a higher level, I really think that when you split in AI, there's a couple different areas. I really recommend looking into. For one, there's the how to upskill your people on using generative AI tools, so whether that's Gemini, Glean, any of these on the market that help connect to your data, especially your enterprise data, and help increase productivity. and satisfaction in a lot of employees. So that is one area. A second area, kind of with that training, is to consider when you're using AI tools, whether that is from these kind of more chatbot or whether it's more from the build it and the agentic and the ability to predict or do dynamic understanding, is to make sure that people are aware of automation bias and to understand that AI needs, it's a black box in some ways, but it really shouldn't be. It needs to be explainable and should be able to be traced step by step. And that kind of leads to the third area and where we're increasing in, say, RA. The agentic AI revolution kind of per se at the moment, it's really booming, but it's more important than just having and using these agents or building one up quickly. It's really essential that each of these ties in a completely understandable and explainable way. Now, LLMs have the problem of being a black box, but it doesn't have to be fully black box. With citations and explainability from authoritative sources, you can use it as a human, increase your scale while maintaining a high quality. Um, and there's really wonderful ways of doing that. But it takes careful engineering, a lot of thought, understanding the domain, and constant evaluation to make sure you're living up to that high quality standard.
Thanks, Mel. Yeah, you touched on a few really key things. I know I'd asked Cameron a little about like kind of upskilling the team. I guess Josh or Jenny, anything there that you'd add in terms of how your organization is trying to upskill your team on leveraging AI and and
Yeah.
really how best to leverage it, I guess.
Yeah, no. So that's something my office has been kind of put in charge of, right? And it's been a difficult and, nuanced process just because it's new for all of us. The Office of the Director is really responsible for putting together a lot of the policy documentation. We're putting together the use cases. We're covering the different security aspects. So we started putting together a lot of documentations that then the other ICs were able to leverage. HHS in particular is really kind of pushing all of the op devs to, kind of share their AI tools to give everybody the opportunity to try them out, right? Given that this is such a new space, and especially on the research side for NIH, that's something that, being able to provide the researchers a variety of different tools to figure out the thing that's going to best meet their needs. I think one of the things we're really focusing on is trying to shift our training. That's something that we've kind of identified as a gap at this time, just to say, we need to make sure that we're covering sensitivity, we're, covering the ethical part of AI usage, that we're able to, teach folks about data sensitivity, and those different things that, from a researcher's perspective, right, may not be at the top of their priority list, but for us on the security side are things that we're, very well attuned to. And so I think for us, it's really just being able to A, make that information available, and then B, changing our approach to education, and then making sure that we're disseminating that out into all the different areas.
Thanks, Jenny. Josh, anything you wanted to add further?
I guess this the kind of the comments I had before was I would still be applicable to this one. Yeah, we're really looking at how AI can be utilized in exercises and just shorten the time frame for that staffing function for from an AO, an action officer level, going all the way to compact AF or commander pack AF of the four-star general. How do we shorten that time frame? Because some of those decisions have to be made instantaneous for as or operations execution. Sorry about the acronyms. We love our acronyms in the government or the DOW. But yeah, that's one of the really big things, the really big pushes right now is how do we use AI to help shorten the staffing process from say the AO or the action officer all the way to the compact AF or I'm a Preparo. Yeah, and there's a couple other anomaly detection was mentioned earlier. That's another big effort in the DOW right now is how do we leverage AI to get after anomaly detection. So
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I mean, I think that's another challenge with AI. And Mel, you sort of touched on it too, like kind of making sure you're tying, kind of each use case in a meaningful and explainable way. And there's all these tools out there. Like, how do you choose what makes sense and what really addresses your need? Or maybe Melly, when you're working with different agencies, like how do you help them sort of identify like, hey, what's the primary challenge and like what do you really need? Because you can go in so many different directions. There's so many, tools out there that you can try to leverage, but um, they have to be meaningful, right?
Absolutely. It's incredibly important that just like any other tool on the market, that you know what your problem is and why you're wanting to solve it. What AI is not a magic bullet. You can't just apply it to anything and then huzzah, life is better. You take what you have, the data in particular is incredibly important. If you don't have the right information to give it, whether that, and this is true whether you're using a commercial chatbot or whether you're designing your own domain specific LLM, which is one of the things we're up to. Um, it's incredibly important to have the right data and the right instructions. Generative AI is a lot like working with another colleague and a human being, but one that's very, very focused. And so giving it the right type of instructions at the right time and having that domain expertise is critical. And that allows you to suddenly be able to scale and augment your human workforce in a way that is helpful, but be careful when you're evaluating vendors that if you're seeing them propose signs of more of a magic bullet, that's something to flag and go deeper in to really make sure that you're understanding what value you're going to have from it and you're not just using a hammer for the wrong idea.
Thanks, Melly. Yeah, I think no, that really is a great point. I'd love to hear from the audience and ask them, a little bit around this topic on, what's their biggest barrier that their teams face in using AI or data analytics to mitigate supply chain risk. Is it data quality, um, the lack of the technical expertise, integration into workflows, legal and regulatory uncertainty, or limited budget or buy-in? And I think as we're waiting for those comments from the audience or the responses, I think you've all touched on, I think, bits and pieces of all of these. So, data quality or access and some of the legal or regulatory uncertainty, as when budget, of course, always comes into play. Anytime you talk about AI in any conversation or any forum, data quality and that, it's only as good as the information that you're providing it. Any thoughts or comments around that from the panel on you know data governance or just trying to make sure you're keeping that information clean so that AI can do what it's meant to do?
So I think for us, one of the conversations we are always having is, where's the source of truth coming from?
Mhm.
As the other federal staff can talk to, this is something that the government doesn't necessarily always do a great job of, right? We have a lot of disparate systems. There's a lot of information in different places. There's a lot of what we would consider data loss, right? Because we know people are, pulling sections of information, they're doing their manipulations, right? We're using that to make decisions. And all of those kind of primary business enterprise systems, they don't always talk to each other. So from the governance side, that's something we are spending a lot of time on, right? Really identifying where that information is coming from, and making sure that the data sets that we are using are, being vetted and that we are, using data that is going to provide, to Melly's point, the value. And that's something, we kind of keep coming back to, knowing that there are AI tools for everything now, right? Is really that justification to say this is going to improve X, Y, or Z, whether it's, time back, it's cost savings, it's a process improvement. And that's something I think that we're trying to make sure that as we're identifying the different tool sets that we want to implement, where we're going to actually see that value add and that we're not just, throwing around AI just because it's new and trendy.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Um, Cool.
This
I
is,
wanted to kind
oh,
of shift gears a little bit. We've touched on a little bit about collaboration and we've talked about working with, some partners on the industry side and whatnot, but would love to just talk a little more about collaboration and, any examples you can share of any kind of cross-agency, cross-sector collaboration that you're all you've all found to be valuable in helping in kind of these supply chain risks. So I don't know if anyone would like to give us an example to start off. Would love to hear any cross agency or cross team collaboration.
I'll go on touch on that. As I've mentioned, for the procurement checklist tool that we developed, we didn't just develop questions out of thin air and say, "Hey, we have a fancy tool. Here you guys go." We actually sent that out to get approval, obviously from like EPA leadership. We sent that out to the Water Sector Coordinating Council. We wanted to allow as many stakeholders to get eyes on the tool, have an understanding of why we developed the tool, what purposes it's serving, see what the questions are, to identify if there are any like gaps within the tool. So we have worked with, I mean, a long list, and I wish I could name everybody that's in the Water Sector Coordinating Council, but a very long list of folks to let them see the tool and provide us feedback. And we are still accepting feedback from them as well. We are doing updates to the checklist, like I think we're doing like a quarterly basis right now. So as we collect the questions in, we can see how it can fit into the tool. Because they'll identify things such as, well, maybe you should rearrange this question this way so that way, the vendor and the utility can understand it in the same manner. And again, we just do this on the quarterly basis to allow this tool to be something that was developed by the water sector as a whole and not just an EPA developed tool.
Thanks, Cameron. Josh or Jenny, any examples of where you're collaborating kind of across different groups?
I'll take this one. So one of the things we talked about yesterday is fuels. So obviously, being on an island, we had to import everything. So how do we get fuels from, say, CONUS, continental United States, to here in a timely manner? So there's a lot of handshakes that have to be conducted between the commercial side to the military side to state and local governments. So we're looking at that supply chain from starting with the company, say World Fuels, and then how do they interface with, say, the government, either at the federal level or the state level, and then looking at mapping that supply chain all the way through here, and then being able to identify the critical junction points that we need to be able to, say, sensor or monitor, so that my boss, Compact Half, is to be able to understand that fuel supply chain from soup to nuts, so he can make decisions on if he can execute that O plan.
Thanks, Josh. That's great. I mean, you incorporating private sector, the military, state and local government. That's a great example. Jenny, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I
And
think
then
one of the
Molly.
things that
Go
we're
ahead.
doing is just putting together a community of practice specifically for AI, and we've got many different agencies participating in this. And I think it gives us an opportunity to kind of create those partnerships with some of the other operating divisions and to really kind of create this information sharing, knowing that there's so much new going on. And it gives us that really collaborative type environment. So, we will develop something and you take it to the community of practice, and it gives other folks an opportunity to, ask questions, to poke holes, and it gives them, some information that may inform their decision making. And so that's something, we've really found success just in having that partnership with those other agencies, because, we're all kind of in this race, but the information sharing is super critical.
Yeah, Melly?
I love that everyone here has been focusing so much on the cross collaboration. That's really exciting to me because it's something that we've seen a lot of success in. Sayari has been working across private and public sectors for many, many years now. And whether that's law enforcement or now the most recent, we've been working a lot with Silicon Valley. And what we found over and over and over is kind of tied into that last one. Understanding in all these different sectors and across the board helps raise the needs for everyone else. One sector may have a need that's kind of emerging and it's not there yet, but then down the road that goes into the other sectors and helps something that they need in the future. So by having that collaboration, and I think this is going to be true for each of the panelists from what I'm hearing as well, having a large collaboration event means that you're not just getting today's problem and sharing all of that, but you're also preparing for tomorrow's future problem. And it really
Mhm.
is a critical piece of the puzzle.
And I'm sure in many cases, the problems that you're all experiencing are probably not unique to your agency, right? They're probably very similar problems that other agencies are dealing with that, or maybe have already been fortunate enough to solve. And being able to hear from them will kind of expedite the solution on your end. Um,
Absolutely.
I think, you know, Josh, I loved your example earlier with the Lamborghini. Um, and when you think of sort of the different, barriers that have to kind of get broken down to really get the full value out of AI or some other tool, like, is there any ways you like to work with, when you think across like tech teams, like the folks actually using the tools. There's obviously the security measures and things like, and not just Josh, but anyone. Like, what can we do to try to continue to like break down the silos and maybe kind of work across all of the different groups within an organization that rightfully so come at it from a different perspective, but where ultimately we can get the most out of these tools. And again, anyone who wants to take a shot at that. Yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
So I'm going to say this just because I'm a big transparent, direct person. Transparency, right? And honesty. That's, I think, something that for a lot of us, right, there's that fear that you don't want to share, if something didn't work out or there was some sort of a failure. I love to say technology won't fix a broken process. I like to kind of start at the beginning and really understand like what's the root or the cause, right? And part of that is that vulnerability to share about something that may not be working, right? And to be able to kind of trace it back through those lines of accountability. And ultimately, there's probably a policy informing that. And so I think, looking at how do we break down those silos, it's really understanding that partnership is critical for operational success, right? And it's all of our
Mhm.
responsibilities. And I think that's something, we see a lot of on the federal side, just because we're all kind of working towards the same mission. We may have our individual outcomes we're working towards, but at the end of the day, we're all kind of rowing in the same direction. And so I think for me, that's the transparency and the trust piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Um, I guess from that the sort of, you know, vulnerability or being able to kind of be okay with like trying something and fail, like, are there ways that you've all, or maybe Melly, you may even have some examples of this where, when you think of sort of before putting something into to live production, I guess, what are like the test environments or like a sandbox kind of scenario where you can like kind of poke holes in it a little bit and maybe even from a user kind of learn how to leverage it best before really putting it into production. Is there any examples there you could share, anyone?
Absolutely. I definitely recommend trying to get this in front of a small subset of users and have them poke as many holes in it as possible. One of the powers of generative AI is the fact that it enables us to try things out in a very natural language process, but it also makes it much more difficult to test and evaluate than traditional, whether that's traditional programming, whether that's deterministic, or even machine learning, which has a finite set of answers and a kind of a standard way of evaluating. This is really a field that's ongoing in its study, so trying to stay up to date with what are some of the newest abilities. But at the end of the day, you want to again know what your problem is, know what your expectation is, and try to do an attack on it in from every which way. This is where it ends up playing a lot into the cybersecurity side of things. You're doing your attack vectors on it are a little different than usual, and your users are probably going to use it in a way you would never think of. So that's just something to keep in mind. Training goes a long way, but even then, it's incredible what people will find around the world. So that's where if you're building your own agent from scratch, look deeply into evaluations, LLMs as a judge, and different ways like that. So you have confidence that what you're putting out there is high confidence, very valuable, and doing what you're expecting.
Thanks, Molly. Um, I think we have time for our third polling question here to the audience. So I'd like to share that with you all that have dialed in today. What would most improve your organization's ability to collaborate on supply chain risk? Is it shared tools and platforms, clear ownership of roles, cross-training between functions, more public-private partnerships, or flexible acquisition or procurement? And again, I think it's great because I think we've touched on a piece of all of these, I think, so far today, but it'd be great to get the audience's take and see what they find most important. So pretty evenly, split across several categories. Shared tools, clear ownership, cross-training, and flexible acquisition. Any of those kind of ring true for anyone on the panel?
I'll say the cross training just because I have this use case happening right now. We do website hosting. And so, as we know, right, there's an increase in nefarious activity. And especially now that we see a lot of the platforms moving to the subscription-based model, we are kind of doing a cross training of sorts where our app dev team is really helping look at the log analysis, attempting to try to limit some of that bad traffic and take some of that burden off the security team. This, I think, really allows us to better serve our customers just because, again, subscription based, there is a cost associated with views on certain sites. And so, being, again, good stewards of the dollar for the government, it's really trying to make sure that we're, meeting a customer's needs, but also have the ability to save them money and, not necessarily drive up subscription costs with bad actors trolling websites and, all of the AI hits that are pulling information from, sites like the NIH.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. I know we only have a few minutes here left, but I'd love to hear from each of you as you look at preparing for 2026, and you look ahead. What trends or emerging technologies, whether AI or otherwise, do you think are going to have a big impact on managing supply chain and supply chain risk? Maybe Jenny, since
Yeah.
you're on the screen, you want to go first?
No, that's fair. Yeah. So I think for me, one of the things that I think kind of stands out is really just using these real-time analytics, and especially from the supply chain and the ordering side, from the suppliers. And, that's something I think for us is really critical on the healthcare side, preventing disruption. And so for us, it's being able to leverage AI to monitor things like weather patterns and to look at, maybe some political shifts that might be impacting our global suppliers, to look at performance data, and really be more proactive in our approach and trying to reduce that risk to make sure that we have, the supplies that we need to provide that care.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Maybe Cameron?
It's just a little tricky. So I think for us, it would be more on the training side of getting the water sector to understand how they can go about using AI in the future to help them identify, what are some key areas that AI can play a really good role for you all. And I think it was Josh that mentioned the living off the land and detecting some of those anomalies. While I'll say, at least on my part, I don't think we are aware of any bad actors using AI. I think we're just aware of the damage done from the bad actor causing a cybersecurity incident. So we don't know if AI was in play, but maybe even finding out was AI, involved in any sort of way to kind of let the utilities know, hey, AI has been used to cause, these type of cybersecurity incidents. Just kind of to attempting to raise awareness of what's going on. So I think that would be one of our emerging things is just getting that good foothold with the water sector to say, hey, this is how we can use it. This is how others might use it against us. And how can we start moving forward from there?
Thanks, Cameron.
Mhm.
Josh, any final thoughts?
So I get two kind of paths for AI. As one is network defense. So right now the big effort for network defense is anomaly detection. So how do we find those needle in the haystack attacks? So you have terabytes and petabytes of data. How do you find those one or two bits of data that's going to trigger that incident response or that that triage for saying, hey, this is looks nefarious. And then the other one is the combining those disparate systems that are antiquated or probably out of date. The systems are have old information, so kind of the phrase "garbage in, garbage out." So how do we update those old systems or disparate systems to feed autonomously multiple systems together to have that comprehensive, that cohesive storyline to say combat Paparo. So that's going to be another big effort to get after.
Great. Thanks, Josh. And Melanie, I'd love to give you the final word today.
Oh, thank you. Here at Sayari, we're really excited about 2026. On the downside, I do think generative AI is going to be a bit more trouble for a lot of us in the year of 2026. It's going to be scaling up with a lot of misinformation becoming more and more available. You're going to probably be able to see an increase in documents that are misleading or have just outright errors and are able to slip through the cracks as systems are trying to catch up and flag them. Here at Sayari, though, we're really excited. We already have over a decade of very safe, authoritative data and knowledge experience, and that delivers us as a wonderful foundation that's letting us really use agentic AI and then domain-specific trained LLMs to speed up your analysts and be able to help them catch those before they're really the anomaly is really widespread. So we're really excited about where is coming in 2026. And I think we're going to be able to do a lot of really cutting edge things that help enable you have a safer supply chain that's transparent, explainable, and will help you in your day to day.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Melly, and thank you all. I really want to thank you for everyone who attended today. I think it was a great discussion. I hope you came away with some really great thoughts to take back to your organizations and to our panel. Again, Josh, Cameron, Jenny, and of course, Melly, thank you so much for all of your great insights today. And again, thank you to Sayari, our great partners on today's discussion. Thank you for making it a great session and look forward to speaking to everyone again soon. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.